In this video, I'm going to make some speakers that are made to fit in the corner of a room. This is a pine prototype, but so far I've only been successful in making one of these. I had this idea back when I was in architecture school, which was a while ago. After doing some really dangerous stuff in the wood shop, I could only make one and it wasn't made very well. But now I hope I have the skills and the wisdom to make two speakers successfully. I'm going to use solid cherry and oak for my new speakers. Then, surprisingly enough, I'm going to cut the boards to length. But this video is really about striving to make beautiful things and seeing through the eyes of a designer and a maker. Spoiler alert, that's what all my videos are about. I'll also share my new approach to making YouTube videos. But now let's make some sawdust. Always check for square. I wish I could tell you I intentionally had my hometown written on this board, but I didn't. Okay, it's day two. I didn't get a lot done on day one, at least it doesn't seem like it. Essentially 8 boards that are cut to size. But I try to remind myself, I'm doing this for the joy of it. I mean, trust me, I could buy speakers for a lot less money than I have invested in this, and certainly a lot less time, but they wouldn't be this cool. So let's move on with it. Now I plane the boards down to a perfect 3/4 of an inch. My father taught me to solder many years ago. With that knowledge and a little help from YouTube, I managed to make these crossovers. A crossover essentially sends the right sound to the woofer and the right sound to the tweeter, in my limited understanding. Brand new hole saw that's just the right size. Best to install the base ports and the speaker hookups before I glue up the box. So I have a love-hate relationship with these hole saws. They work really well, but they also confuse me. Yes, apparently I'm not intelligent enough to understand a drill bit. I have to use them the wrong way, or bad things happen. That wasn't a lot of fun. And that's not a very clean cut. Let's take a moment to think and put the chuck back in the drill press. So there are pins that should hold the hole saw in place. Beautiful. But when I use the pins, it's loose. And when it's loose, bad things happen. So the best way to use it is the wrong way. Don't use the pins, just tighten it up on the threads. But for someone as obsessive as I am, using a tool the wrong way just seems wrong. So I try to use it the right way, and it keeps failing. Maybe I just need to accept that the wrong way is the right way. I'm confused. Okay, let's take a break from the build and look at this from a designer's eye. Now, I don't think regular box speakers fit well in corners. When you just put them in the corner the way you think they should go, they don't project the sound into the middle of the room. But when you turn them to project the sound into the middle of the room, they don't seem like they fit in the corners. My OCD acts up, and I think, why is that box at an angle in the corner. A long time ago, I had this idea for a speaker that would fit better in a corner. Basically cut the top at 45 degrees and then angle that cut down to the base. So thinking like a designer, I wanted the form to be pure. I used plywood, and then I didn't want to see the edges of the plywood, so I wanted to miter every edge of the plywood, which is complicated. And then it's a complex form, which makes it even more complicated. Essentially what I was trying to do was create something that looked like it was a solid, like it came out of a log. And honestly, that was kind of dumb. The reality of the speakers are that they're a box made of individual boards. What I know now that I didn't know then was anytime you try to make one thing look like another thing, you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. The base tube needs to be 9.5 inches long for this particular speaker. There's probably a better term for it, but you get what I mean. So now, starting over, I wanted not only the idea to be simple, but the build itself to be simple, or at least as simple as possible. I would start the build with 4 boards that are all the same and glue them up in a pinwheel. Then glue a top and a bottom on the tube to make a box. Then cut a corner off the box. Then make a plate to cover the opening and hold the drivers. It's as simple as that. The actual build is a little more complicated, but I'll get into that later. I marked the boards for the center of the 4-inch holes that will be at the base of this speaker. In case you're wondering, yes, I installed the hole saw the wrong way. Maybe I just need to accept that it's a confusing world and sometimes wrong is right. So my router is ill, but I think I can fix it. You know, I'm starting to embrace the fact that maintaining tools is part of woodworking. Now I'm just gluing the 4 side boards of the speakers up in a pinwheel with the bottom board in place. The boards are slightly larger than they need to be, so the edges overlap, and I can plane them smooth. I love coming out to the wood shop after a glue up. It's like opening a gift on Christmas morning. It's day 3 or 4. I've kind of lost count. I have an architectural practice, so I get out here when I can. This is a pinwheel glue up, and it takes pretty much every long clamp I have, and I can only do one of these at a time. But the joints are tight. Everything's looking good. I'm happy with it. Now's the time in the build where I'm approaching the cut that totally ruined everything so many years before. I now have the entire box to work with. I have a better idea of how to set up the saw. I know the blade is sharp. I will attach this board with double stick tape. The board will run against the rip fence. But all that is more or less theory until you make the cut. Time to just take a deep breath and do it. The solid wood is actually easier to cut than the plywood, and ultimately, the cut was fairly easy. And it all worked. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. What a relief. I would hate to ruin these things after so much work. I now know that making something with all mitered corners is still beyond my abilities. That requires absolute perfection. And I've never achieved that. Probably never will. I don't even want to try to create the deception that these speakers are made from a solid chunk of wood. I've learned that for me, expressing the reality of the thing is just a better path. These speakers are boxes made of wood boards, so that is how they should present themselves. I have also realized that design is not only the conceptual idea, it is also the process of realizing and refining the idea. All of this intellectual introspection probably seems weird to some woodworkers, because woodworkers are, by nature, makers and designers. But I come at this from an architectural perspective. Architects, interior designers, engineers, industrial designers, we design things that we don't make. And if we're not careful, we may not understand the challenges and opportunities of making the things we design. So this is probably a pretty good time to talk a little more in depth about the detailed design of the speakers. One thing I learned over the years is that speakers are a lot more complicated than I first thought. The first time I made a speaker poorly, I just bought a woofer and a tweeter, wired them up, and that was it. Now I know there's a lot more engineering or design that goes into a speaker that really sounds good. There are a lot more parts and pieces, and that acoustic design is beyond me. So I bought a kit from CSS, the Tory kit, which is their least expensive kit, and it comes with a woofer, a tweeter, a crossover, sound absorption material, a speaker hookup, wiring, and instructions. The kit is made to go with the box that they've designed. I basically just reverse engineered my box. I calculated the area of their box and then made my box the same size. The volume of space inside a speaker is important to the sound. Figuring out the volume of space inside their box was fairly easy. Length times width times height. And then making mine the same was fairly easy, because the corner that's taken off is 25% of the total, so I could just do length times width times height times 0.75 until I got the number X the same. I also studied the proportions, because a speaker's function is not just to make sound, it's also an object in your world, and I wanted this to be a beautiful object in my world. I found that I wanted the speakers to be taller than the required volume, but if I lifted them up off the floor, the base port could be in the bottom, and I could make the speakers taller and have the correct volume. The overall dimensions of the speaker ended up being 8 by 32, or, in fact, the speaker is 4 cubes. But back to the build and making the faceplate. First, I traced the prototype faceplate on my oak board. I also marked where all the screws will go. It became not only a corner speaker, but a tower speaker as well. But this information may not be particularly useful to you unless you're making these exact speakers. It is the thinking, the process of design, I think, that may be useful to you as you design whatever kind of speakers or anything else you want to design. The key takeaways are that as a more mature designer, I accepted the true complexity of what I was trying to build. I considered the processes and materials it would take to build it. and I created opportunities to correct errors. This is the kind of design I've learned to love. I have learned that by trying to see through the eyes of the maker and the designer. I can create a design that appears very simple, but has a lot of underlying complexity, and successfully make the speakers. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the best projects give you an excuse to buy a new tool, and this is my new circle cutting jig. Now you might be saying, why don't you just get a CNC? Well, I have a strict rule with tools. I don't want any tools that are smarter than I am. And as we've seen, the hole saw is already at the limit. This jig is fairly simple, but it's fun to use and it does a great job of making the rabbet and the hole I need to inset the drivers. And then I rough cut the angles of the faceplate on the bandsaw. Now I countersink all the holes for the screws so they look intentional. The first test fit is a success. Things are looking promising. So it's a beautiful winter day here in Charlotte. Couldn't keep working inside in my studio and just had to come out to the wood shop. Now the first thing I did when I came into the wood shop was dodging some clutter. I knocked this over and chipped the corner. Easy fix, but it's a clear indication that it's time to clean up. So I've done that and now we can move forward. But I'm probably going to stop work at sunset because, of course, I have wood scraps and they need to be burned. And somebody needs to have some beverages and burn the wood scraps. The angle of the top board needs to be trimmed to match the base. Nice. I needed to create some blocking so the screws of the faceplate have something to grab a hold of. It's kind of a tedious job, but we're making progress. Enough progress to quit for the day. Well, it's another beautiful day in the wood shop, but it has not started out very well. I was cutting the extra off of this, and then I went to the second one, and I cut it backwards. So that is a big problem. I considered gluing the offcut back on, but that's going to create a pretty ugly glue joint, and this piece gets blackened, so the glue will really show up. So I think my only alternative is to make this again. And luckily, I have another piece of oak. This is what you get for not paying attention. I align the faceplate with tape so I can pre-drill and set the screws. Well, I'm going to stop here for the day. Screwing up the other faceplate really kind of took the wind out of my sails. But my wife is out of town and our dogs have been inside all day, so they need to get outside and play. After remaking the faceplate, I decided to cut the bevel on the correct side. The rough cut of the faceplate is oversized, so I can sand it smooth with the side of the speaker. I want a shadow line between the black face and the cherry base of the speaker. It's a great opportunity to use my hand plane and create a nice bevel. All the corners get a 1/4 inch round over. This is something I couldn't really do if I was using plywood with a veneer. The best way I have found to blacken oak with vinegar and steel wool is to saturate it with tannins first. So this is some tannin mixture or tannins. I never really know which one it is, but I bought this online. It's just granular tannins that you mix up with water, and it kind of smells like coffee. I never tire of watching the reaction of the wood and the steel wool in vinegar. I apologize if this scene runs a little bit long. I just think it's cool. Sanding, sanding, sanding. Time for some Osmo hard wax oil. I just love the way the cherry pops. With wood, it seems like the most messed up part is actually the best part. And finally, some oil on the blackened face plates for protection. Time to wire up and solder the speakers. Now that I've gotten back into it, soldering's a lot of fun. I'm using rubber tape to make sure there's a good seal between the faceplate and the rest of the speaker. I like to make things that can be taken apart and maintained. It's a good thing because this speaker, as soon as I finished it, I picked it up and something was rattling around. Turns out a piece of wood fell into it, and I wouldn't have been able to get it out if I had glued this on. Well, here they are. I think they turned out great. I think they look really cool, and I tested them in the room, and they sound great. The workout room where they're going to go is not yet complete, and I need to make a stand for the stereo units, which I'll share in a future video, and I'll show these in the room at that time. Oh yeah, I said I would share a new approach to YouTube videos. Well, here it is. So I've been chasing algorithms. Do this, do that, flood the world with gibberish to get attention. Be consistent so advertisers will like you. But I just don't do well in a world where consistency is more important than inspiration and presentation is more important than ideas. So I decided I'm making these videos for me. I hope others will enjoy them. I hope others will find these videos helpful as they strive to become better designers and makers. I hope people will like and subscribe and comment so this community grows. But in the end, these stories are for me. But just check out how cool they are. Really happy with them.